Good afternoon, televiewers of 7 News Television. This is another edition of Experts, a program that we know you love it because we bring various experts of domains that may enlighten us about certain societal issues. According to World Bank Group, over 3.5 billion people live in countries that are blessed with oil, gas, and minerals. A little bit of good governance and transparent management of these natural resources will help wipe away poverty and boost the moral or enrich the citizens living in that country. Not forgetting the fact that there must be transparency in the environment, as well as ensuring that the citizens or people living around the areas where minerals are being extracted ought to benefit from it. Today, we are talking of the role of extractive industries in Cameroon. Mr. Sylvanus Benla, who is a member of the committee in Cameroon, will help throw more light on this. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Thanks for talking to 7 News.
It's really a pleasure, Mr. Bisson, to be with you on this panel today to throw more light on the role of extractive industries to our economy and to our development, and might be the importance of governance and transparency. If we were to add accountability in the management of these resources so that the grassroots populations, the neighboring populations can enjoy the fruit of these resources.
Mr. Sylvanus, who is Mr. Sylvanus Benla?
Sylvanus Shulika Benla is a Cameroonian, a civil society activist for the past 27 years, and has been very much interested in developmental issues as well as governance. I am a member of the Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative Monitoring Committee or Follow-up Committee for Cameroon. I hold as permanent secretary for Consortium Mining Best Practices.
Okay.
And permanent secretary for the National Network of Cameroon Civil Society Organizations in charge of promoting human rights. The French acronym is known as RECORD.
Okay. So
let me end it there.
We are talking of extractive industries. What is extractive industries for those who don't know about that?
Okay, extractive industries, to be very brief and down to earth, is got to do with all the activities that have got to do with our subsoil, that has to look for minerals, which can be petroleum, gas, this we call hydrocarbons, which can be solid mines, which we call minerals, it can be diamond, gold, and so on. This is when it concerns the upstream. Okay. We talk of extractive industries because we need some technology, we need some expertise, we need some know-how to identify, to locate these minerals in our subsoil and bring them out. Extractive means that you are still having it raw. When any industry, any company that is dealing in such an activity, either at the exploration stage. Exploration means we are doing research, prospection, feasibility studies to know whether there are resources, minerals in our subsoil or not, and whether if this minerals, the quantity that is there, if exploited, can be beneficial to the company doing it.
Okay.
So we have the studies, there's research,
all right,
and then the the conclusions of the study is that this oil deposit or diamond deposit is profitable, is of high quality and quantity, and that if the money put into it to exploit it it can also be regained and more interest or more profit made for number of years. That's where we come to the conclusion that there is that deposit is profitable. And then you hear the company going in to carry now the second stage, which is the exploitation stage, which has to do with extracting the mineral resource from the earth crust. That is when we talk of extractive industries. We end there we are talking of extractive industries, but we also put part of transportation of these resources when they are still transporting them raw.
Okay.
That's why you have the Codco pipeline, which they are still found at the extractive level, because the crude petroleum is still transported through Cameroon to the tankers that will take them now to the refineries. When they are reached, once they reach the refineries, the extractive aspect is ended. So we are talking of upstream activity of extraction.
Of what importance is extraction to the Cameroonian economy?
The importance is that, like any raw material, once it has been produced or extracted, you sell it either at its raw stage or at its transformed stage or as finished product. Right. But to a country like Cameroon, where we don't even have the technology, the expertise of even exploring before exploiting and transporting, it means that what can only be beneficial to us will be the difference between the cost of extraction that the company or the enterprise which would have carried that exercise has spent, not so?
Yeah.
From the total revenue, then now we can look at the remainder, where we have to share with them the profits or the sales or the quantities. But now that's where the contracts come in to say, okay, after you have removed the cost of production or cost of extraction, in petroleum line we say cost oil. It costs oil. That is what we call in normal economic jargon cost of production.
All right.
That's what the enterprise has spent to get the material out, minus the general revenue that will accrue from the sales of that or from the quantity. So that is what we will gain. We start thinking of what we will gain from that remaining part. And when you look at it, you see now that a country like ours will only depend on taxes and then the share of production, because Cameroon is practicing the share of production contract approach with petroleum issues.
Okay.
Yes, rather than concession where they give it and then the person does everything to come and give you a certain amount.
Yeah.
No, this is share of production where when he has subtracted the cost of production, then the remaining now the company will share with our government. It might be 65% to 35%, 65% to Cameroon and 35% to the company, but including the taxes that they would have paid. So only benefit mostly from the taxes and then the share of production that the government gains.
Let me find out from you, Mr. Silvanus, which is most important or beneficial? Is it at the final stage or the production stage or the exploitation stage?
Normally, when you do the exploration stage, is, they will tell you it's a very risky venture.
All right.
And it needs a lot of capital investment. Cameroon does not have these billions to risk. So the companies who know what this raw material, this mineral resource is good for them or for the world and what they can do with, now venture and come to us who have the resources, but do not have the means to explore and exploit them and maybe transform and manufacture. They come now and tap. It's just like we produce cocoa and we sell. But the difference here is we work the cocoa in our plantations. We can manage the other aspects. But here is the company that has the expertise from exploration to exploitation. I don't know whether I've...
you've really answered the question perfectly. Like I said, I wanted to know. We are talking of extractive industries, and Cameroon is a member of EITI, that's Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative.
Right.
So what are the benefits of the local population when it comes to extractions of minerals in their environment?
I would like to bring us back to what is the Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative and a bit of history.
Okay.
The Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative is, as you get the name, started as an initiative because it had been discovered that countries rich or endowed with mineral resources were the countries that had more poverty, that were suffering from poverty, the population from poverty. They're the same countries that had tensions of conflicts and wars. They are the same countries that are underdeveloped. So the question was, why being so rich in natural resources but being so poor?
Okay.
And people attributed it 100% to poor governance, lack of transparency and accountability. But I differ to that, because there's a book I've written, it's just a 10-page document, which brings us to carry on this reflection better.
Okay.
Is it the problem of transparency, good governance that makes these countries to be poor, or other aspects? Let us come to the point of good governance as been the cause of this poverty and underdevelopment. It is true, because when you look at the contracts, when they are signing the contracts, when they have identified exploration in your zone, you are not even aware.
You're not aware.
It's the government that sends people to negotiate and so on. And we don't always know what happens at the negotiation table. Are these persons who negotiate for us patriotic citizens or barely interested, egoistic persons?
Yeah.
And most of the cases has been the latter.
Okay, right.
And that's why we blame some of the terms of the contracts, and one of the reasons we question the clause, the confidentiality clause in contracts. Why do you say contracts should not be public if you are really certain that the negotiations were clean and clear?
Yeah.
Well, that put aside, there's also this aspect. When the taxes are being collected, how do they collect them? Who collect the taxes?
Yeah.
Is all that is collected being brought into the coffers? Is all that is brought in the coffers being used for development? Those questions we can ask, we can trace. That's why with EITI coming in as a panacea to these problems, talked of transparency, and this transparency is seen in the production of EITI reports annually, where we have the amount, the quantity of raw material or revenue that got into the country thanks to the extractive sector.
Yeah.
For the past years, till around 2012-13, Cameroon could only talk of petroleum.
Yeah.
But later we've been looking at the solid mines, which are still very nascent.
Okay, Mr. Silvanus will come back to the EITI reports. Let's just follow this excerpts of one of the Director General of Worldwide Fund for Nature when he signs a contract with the Ministry of Economic Planning and Regional Development to manage the biodiversity in the East and the South region, including mining.
Pour s'assurer qu'on investit dans un projet qui va peut-être coûter beaucoup plus au gouvernement ou bien aux Camerounais dans l'avenir pour mitiger les impacts. Vous voyez, mitiger les impacts coûte de l'argent, mais quand on veut éviter à mitiger les impacts, on peut avoir des situations qui vont nous coûter plus cher. J'ai juste cité le cas de quelqu'un qui veut construire sa maison, qui soit ne veut pas faire un plan parce qu'il pense que ça sera moins cher. Mais au finish, tu peux avoir une maison de 7 étages qui s'écoule, peut-être en tuant les gens. Mais ça coûte combien pour reconstruire la maison? Donc, je crois que j'ai mis ça simple pour que tout le monde comprenne la nécessité d'avoir ce qu'on vient de signer avec le ministère. C'est assez important. Pour un grand projet comme Padidja, il faut tenir compte de l'environnement. Nous sommes là au Cameroun pour apporter notre assistance technique au gouvernement dans tout ce qui concerne l'environnement. Donc, notre intérêt en tant que WWF, c'est la conservation de la biodiversité. Et nous sommes là pour travailler avec tous les ministères pour apporter notre input technique.
Thanks very much, the Tenka crew. That excerpt was cut by Brice Gozok, the head of the economic desk of 7 News. Mr. Silvanus, who is an expert in extractive industry and a member or committee member of the Extractive Industry Transparency Initiative in Cameroon. Fellow viewers of 7 News, if you're just switched in on your television sets, this is your program known as Expert, and we are talking about the role of extractive industries in our country. With us at the studio, we have a specialist who is Mr. Silvanus Binla. Sir,
Yes, sir.
the Ministry of Economic Planning and Regional Development on the 10th of November 2017 signed an agreement with Worldwide Fund for Nature to see how they can manage the biodiversity, including the mining in that region, in order that the population should be beneficiaries to such activities. You were talking about EITI reports. So, what is the report all about?
Yeah, thank you. When you talk about signing biodiversity entente or convention to benefit the local populations, is really vague.
Okay.
Is the impact, is the end result that will now come to benefit the local population. Because we have to make that very clear, because it's the benefit that it brings to the local population that will make us now say that's the impact.
The impact, okay.
But the essence of that is to see how the environment, the biodiversity can be conserved, protected, and so on. And you should understand that when we are talking of environmental issues, they are not compatible with developmental issues.
Yeah.
And communities can only benefit when development is there.
Yeah.
And development, to a point, is not only the projects that we realize, but all the joint system that will make the population feel social change.
Oh, right.
Because you can build a school and the school will mean nothing. Build an industry will mean nothing. But if it does not go as far as changing the mindset and the environment, balancing the two, we will not talk about development and will not talk about benefits to the population. About EITI reports, they are just simple. It has to do with the reconciliation of data collected from both two parties or state party or stakeholders. You have the extractive enterprises or companies, and you have the government. The government of Cameroon is represented by the various entities. You have the Director of Taxes, Treasury, Customs, and SNH, that's the Hydrocarbons Corporation. And then you have now the companies like you have Nadax, Perenco, and some new ones that are coming. They will tell you, we pay this amount of tax for these taxes to the government. They declare. The reconciliator, who is also known as the independent administrator, will turn to the government, give me what you have received as payments from these various companies.
Yeah.
And the government too will give. We received these payments for this tax or this quantity of diamond or of petroleum as the state share from as the contracts put. Then the independent administrator will now put the two together and then see whether this information is compatible or is in line with this. At times there can be some discrepancies.
All right.
And where there are discrepancies, the independent administrator gets to the various stakeholders to explain. And there's no problem if there's a discrepancy.
All right. It must be.
It happens that there's a discrepancy. It depends on when the information was collected or the rate of exchange at that time.
That time, yeah.
Yeah, it depends on on those elements. But what we need in EITI is to tell us, yes, this 1 billion difference is because of.
Yeah.
That's you're seeing transparency, you are seeing accountability. And when they gather all this information, that's when they can tell us that in 2015, the extractive industries gave around 800 billion to the economy.
Right.
Because they have reconciled the two. It can also be that amount where they take the reconciled figures, and then there are some areas, because with the EITI report, if we want to take all the extractive companies or enterprises that are existing in Cameroon, we will have a problem, because you need to go to someone who has just started, who has not even produced, who is still exploring. And when you see that the amount of money that the state needs to reach to audit that person to get his information, it will be more expenditure than the money that he would have gotten from it. So at the level of the committee, what we do with the independent administrator is that we come out with a materiality threshold.
All right.
They call in French materiality. So seuil de materiality. So when they say, like for the 2015 report, which was published last December, the materiality threshold was 65 million. So any enterprise that has paid up to that sum is eligible for the reconciliation. Those that have paid below, they will declare it unilateral. It means that the government will say, I've taken this amount of money from
them.
Yes. Oh. And then they will, that's what in the end you will hear, that in 2015, 800 billion came to the state coffers through the extractive sector. So it makes us now to see. And then there are other taxes, there are other royalties that have to be paid to the councils or to the lawyer communities. This information is all found in that report. Why is this report important? Not just to portray that this amount of money came, but to help us to Cameroonians, civil society, and the populations, what they call the neighboring populations and the local communities, to question some information that we would have seen in the report that has to do with us.
Okay.
For example, they talk of subnational payments and royalties. We had to receive 25% of the total at, let me say, Lokbaba.
Okay.
Then the people of Lobaba, if they read this report and explain, say, but we are supposed to receive 25% of this amount, which is equivalent to, say, 20 billion
Yeah.
or 20 million. Mayor, what has happened? Maybe is that time, that moment too, that the mayor gains information, and then he has to say, okay, we are supposed to receive this. He cannot trace it to the treasury, and
yeah.
we find out.
Right.
And if the population too traces and sees that the council had received, then they will ask the mayor, what did you do with this? So what the importance of the report is to promote or to provoke public debate for proper accountability and proper redistribution of national income.
What will happen in a case where certain inhabitants are being destroyed because they want to extract some mines or minerals from there? What is the government doing, or what will the government in such a situation do to ensure that such populations are transferred to different environments?
Good. You see, like what? Let me just use like the Lompanga, the dam constructions.
Yeah.
We saw a lot of publicity. I think you people covered, and I would like that you go in again to cover and find out what happened. But what happens is, where there is public utility at stake, the population is sacrificed because they are going to exploit it for the population. So it is sacrificed. How they do what we call expropriation. They have to expropriate you first, identify where you have to be relocated, and then see whether they build homes or they give you the money to go and build the homes, and then farming areas and so on. So they have to consider all those things. This has always been done, but the problem is that it's not been really proper. It's not been proper, because that's why you find some communities coming back to stay where they were already displaced, because they never received satisfaction. Not that the company didn't pay the exact money, but because those who were to handle the exercise were not
transparent enough,
and they create troubles for the country. And that's why this transparency and accountability is not only supposed to be limited to the extractive sector. It should be part and parcel of every exercise that we Cameroonians are carrying out. Be able to throw light on what we have done. Let the people understand why this expropriation is taking place. It's not because they hate them, because what will come out from that place will be for the good of all Cameroonians. That's why we talk of public utility, not for a particular person. And because you have sacrificed your land for the good of Cameroonians, you have to be compensated by being relocated and then being paid some damages, or what we call indemnities, for the loss you have incurred.
We are talking about extractive industries. How in Cameroon are these industries managing the solid waste?
That is, it is very interesting, that question, because you are talking about environmental impact. Every project, because you are quoting the World Bank, before the World Bank funds any project, they have to have gone through the feasibility studies. One of the studies is the impact assessment. And if they see is that the impact assessment on the environment is very negative, most often they will not fund.
All right.
But at times you begin to ask yourself, we are promoting mostly this hydro, dam construction projects for hydroelectricity, but we have seen that the lakes that develop behind the dams are more damaging to the ecosystem, biodiversity, than even if the extraction was done open air and so on. Because we cannot imagine what we have lost in terms of biodiversity and in terms of natural resources with the lake that has been created at Lompanga and the Memvele. But all this is just to tell us that you cannot have your omelets without breaking the egg. But how do we now break the egg? Is that the issue? That's the issue. So the environmental assessment, environmental feasibilities are carried out, and they are being handled. And when they are handled, when you see these projects that are being funded, it means that principally or in principle, the environmental assessment studies prove positive.
All right. Oh, televiewers, you've heard from Mr. Silvanus Binla, who is an expert in extractive industries. He's a member of EITI committee in Cameroon. Cameroon is a member of the Extractive Industry Transparency Initiative. And some years back, that was in 2017, there was a meeting that took place at the Bastos neighborhood, where the office of EITI is located. Let's get this report from one of our reporters. Cameroon is counted among the lucky few countries that the Extraction Industries Transparency Initiative, EITI, is supporting to prepare its validation that will demonstrate progress in line with the new standards after it was declared compliant with the organization rule. There is no denial that the 3 days visit of the organization's secretariat in Yaoundé will facilitate the move.
Today, we are helping Cameroon prepare for validation that will demonstrate progress against a new standard, where the bar is much higher than what it used to be. It should be to show also progress, but not a pass or fail system.
With these validations, the scope of information will go viral, as it will not be based any longer on payment disclosure of companies and what the government has received. For what is produced, the prospects, results, and applicable laws in diverse areas, as well as beneficial owners, will be known.
The petroleum sector is very advanced in such a way that each enterprise that is dealing in petrol respect international standards, and their accounts are audited. That's why in the EITI report of Cameroon, you find out that all the petroleum enterprises that are operating in Cameroon, whether they are exploration or exploitation, are being included or involved in the EITI report for Cameroon.
Cameroon has made enormous progress in the extraction industries. With a broader information gotten, the risks of tax evasion and avoidance will be dealt with. Thanks very much, reporter, for that wonderful work. Televiewers would like to apologize for the poor quality of the excerpt. You know, man usually makes machine, but it is normal that those machines always disappoint us. That is a report made by one of the reporters of 7 News Television. Cameroon is a member of the Extractive Industry Transparency Initiative. Viewers of 7 News Television, if you are just switched in on your television sets, this is your program known as Experts. We are talking about the role of extractive industries in Cameroon. We have a specialist and expert who is Mr. Silvanus Binla. He was one of the persons who attended the 3-day seminar. Mr. Silvanus,
Sir.
We are back again. Cameroon is a member of the Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative.
Exactly.
That is a report where the secretariat of the Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative was in Cameroon to talk about validation. What were they validating in Cameroon?
Thank you. They were not really validating. They were preparing the committee for that exercise.
Okay.
With the initiative, it has so many stages. We have the stage of adhering to the initiative. Then we have the stage of implementation, and then we have the phase of evaluation, which we call validation.
All right.
After, with the adoption of the EITI standard, every 3 years, each implementing country is evaluated or validated. Why do they use the word validation? To see whether you have been respecting the basic, the minimal standards that have been adopted for its implementation. So when this team came from the International Secretariat, was to bring the new validation scope or process, the criteria and so on, to share with the committee that has to do the evaluation, because it's just like auditing yourself. And when you have to carry out an audit, you have to know what you are auditing, so that when you are preparing the terms of reference, you prepare terms of references that are realistic.
I see.
So that's what we did, because from that point, Cameroon, from July 2017, is in the validation process. So we are waiting for the initial report on the evaluation, and then the final report. When the initial report will come, it's just like you deal with an auditor. When he finishes the data collection and questioning and so on, he does the preliminary report, which he gives back to you to look whether his findings are what he saw and what you agree. Where there are some errors, you say no, you have exaggerated this point, or you have forgotten this point, and so on, so that when he comes out with his final report, you don't have any other thing to say, because it would have been what both of you would have seen, and you know that his opinion is independent. So that is what is going on now in Cameroon, and that meeting was to prepare for that exercise and to introduce the new evaluation guide that the EITI International Secretariat had compiled, and following the new standards, which are the 2016 standards.
We say Cameroon has really improved in the extraction industries. Cameroon is no longer at the level of looking at the petroleum products as extraction. So what are the other minerals or the minerals or natural resources that are extracted from Cameroon?
We just focus on the truth in it is that hydrocarbons, which when we say hydrocarbons, we mean petroleum and gas. Yes, have advanced. That it has advanced greatly.
Okay.
Because we already have production in Cameroon. Meanwhile, the solid mines, diamond, gold, sapphire, and all other aspects are still at their embryonic state. I know that you ask this question because by say 2010, when you had the growth and employment strategy paper, they were telling us that the government of Cameroon focuses on the extractive sector, especially the solid mines, its growth and development. That is true. It was a good dream, but we've seen that the various enterprises or companies that succeeded in proving that their exploration works were fruitful, have not carried on the exploitation phase. You see, Geovic existed. You don't no longer hear of Geovic. You hear of Cameroon, Irons, Sundown. You hear of the railway project that was envisaged. Today is dead. There are some reasons for that which you and I cannot explain, but the ones that we can explain are that the prices of these mineral resources in the world market have dropped drastically. And you know that these enterprises, these companies are profit seeking. They are not philanthropic, they are not non-lucrative. So if they don't see their interests satisfied, they don't dare. No matter what they had signed with you on paper. But you as a country, you are held hostage because you cannot transfer that concession, the area you are contracted with him or with that company to another company.
That's
until
true.
the company bypasses its years where the permit has to last.
end, yeah.
Because when you have the exploration phase, I think it's 3 years renewable ones, and then the exploitation you go in, I think it's 5, and so on. It depends on how what you put in. Yeah, so that they now give you a contract. But if you stay for some years without carrying on the exploitation, the license can be withdrawn. But so far, I think that they have not, their terms of their contracts have not expired yet, but they are not producing. So what we have is artisanal mining. That's why you see those images they pass in Ezeka, where they have identified gold. It's just the local people doing it with the help of CAPAM, which is a structure at the level of the Ministry of Mines, Industries and Technological Development, to assist, to accompany the artisanal miners. Though somewhere you see the mining code came up with something they are calling semi-mechanized artisanal mining. To every local person who has learned what is artisanal, you will never talk artisanal and mechanized.
Yes.
That's where you have these foreign companies that have come in and have drawn a lot of gold out of our country, especially the Lompanga area, because they gave it to them at cheap price, because they said once the waters will be
flowing, yeah,
there will not be access to it. And what they did, we have some gold that today is stocked as some reserves at the level of the Ministry of Finance. Yes, canalized by this CAPAM. But as per se, extractive industry, solid mining, exploitation is not yet on the go.
We are talking about extractive industries and extractive industries transparency initiative. How many countries are member states to this organization?
When I last looked at my I think the internet, the last time I looked at my report and other information, there were around 56 countries that have adhered to that initiative.
Okay.
Yes. But inside, you will find out that we still might go in and find lesser members, because some countries have decided to withdraw from the initiative. Example of Niger, because when they were sanctioned because of the problem they had, they decided to withdraw, and other countries. Then there are some countries that had been delisted or are suspended by the board of the international board of the initiative. So the process is still ongoing, and it's a voluntary belonging or adherence. But once you are there, it becomes very compulsory and obligating, to the point that you either are being from, like this, our validation. If the validation comes, there will no more talk of compliant, non-compliant, but we are talking of you have the grading is inadequate progress, meaningful progress, satisfactory progress, beyond progress, beyond satisfactory progress, and mediocre. The first one is the mediocre progress. That's where you are nothing is being done, and when you are at that level, they delist you or they suspend you from this. So we are praying that Cameroon should be. So far, I think 1 or 2 countries that have been validated as satisfactory, and they are mostly developed countries.
Wow.
Yes. And we have other reasons. When we have we next meet, we'll try to examine why the developed countries find themselves in that situation better than us.
Mr. Silvanus, you talked of over 52 or 54 countries.
Yes.
Who are members.
Above 50.
Above 50, yeah. Members of the initiative. What does it take to be a member? Are there some dues you pay monthly, yearly? or seasonal dues to this organization?
Honestly speaking, that is a deal, because you know this initiative is the government that commits herself to it. I know that Cameroon I got its admission in 2005 when it presented our letter of intention, and then met up with the requirements by creating the committee and the secretariat, and started producing the reports.
Okay.
Those are the conditionalities that I know, and respecting its validation, deadlines, and so on. About the dues that are being paid, I'm sure they must pay, because to every international organization or in a community setup, at least you have to give in something for the running of the international secretariat. But to be honest with you, I don't know the amount.
All right, we're going to talk about that next time. You talked of some countries might be suspended if they don't meet up. What are the criteria, or how can this country be suspended or removed from the list when, as a member of the Extractive Industry Transparency Initiative?
Yeah, I will just give you one which concerns me. The difference between this initiative is that there is a conditionality that one of the stakeholders must be the civil society.
All right.
If they find out that the civil society hasn't got its independence to follow and to give its own opinion to foster the transparency and accountability, then there will be no reason for you to belong, because it means that one of the stakeholders is absent. Yes. That's why when the problem of Niger went to the board of directors meeting with regards to their validation, they had to suspend them because they said they were one of the civil society activists was being molested and so on. But it's something to evaluate with the case of Niger. Right. But it's just to say that if tomorrow the extractive industries, the companies, are no more participating in the multi-stakeholder group, it means that the initiative is not what it
is. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but we should know that the key partners or parties to this extractive industries is the state, that's the government, and the enterprises.
All right.
It's been their business. It's their business. But the civil society now is being brought in as a watchdog, since we are talking about transparency and accountability. The other things are, if among the different requirements, there are major 8 of them. I cannot be citing them now, but if you have realized like inadequate, when you are evaluated, you have not been doing anything. They have to call you to book. They might suspend you to go and rethink, and then, or they delist you. But I think this delisting is no more coming in. Or you, the country, can also withdraw. If you think that the people are not respecting your sovereignty and that the initiative is like now trespassing, or in Frenchman would say ingérence. That is, how do we call it? Interfering. Yes. The country can say, okay, to hell, it's a voluntary. I came in freely, I go out.
Freely.
Exactly.
Thanks very much, Mr. Sylvanus. Viewers of 7 News Television, you know, the economic growth of a nation, of a continent, is very vital for the citizens to enjoy certain amenities or facilities of the society. Brice Gozok covered an event of the Central Bank of Africa, BIAC. He's going to tell us if there is a progress in this continent or a decrease in the continent. Brice Gozok.
Des poignées de main, échange de documents, gage d'un accord entre le ministère de l'économie, de la planification et de l'aménagement du territoire et le Fonds mondial pour la nature. Une convention de plus sur la préservation de l'environnement et de la biodiversité intégrée de la boucle minière du Dja, qui intervient après un atelier de la COP22 portant sur les changements climatiques observés à Yaoundé en août dernier. Une dégradation significative de l'environnement qui interpelle le Cameroun pour la mise sur pied des stratégies d'aménagement environnementaux.
Ça c'est assez important qu'on tienne compte de l'environnement dans la mise en œuvre de ces projets. Si on ne tient pas compte, on risque d'avoir un projet éléphant qui ne va rien aboutir.
Reconnue en tant que réserve de biosphère de l'UNESCO depuis 1982 et placée sous le patrimoine mondial de la même institution, la réserve du Dja, au-delà des menaces qui pèsent sur elle, notamment un cas de déforestation de sa superficie, fait face aux défis réels de sa mise en valeur. Une situation qui, résorbée, contribuerait à l'amélioration des conditions de vie des populations locales, voire au-delà.
C'est une anticipation parce qu'on aura un environnement tout nouveau, avec d'abord l'exploitation minière et puis par la suite le flux migratoire qui va venir dans cette zone suite à cette exploitation minière.
La préoccupation est donc réelle que celle liée à ces perturbations, au point qu'au-delà du Cameroun, le monde entier s'en émeut.
Thanks very much, Agrippine. Tell our viewers once again we are sorry for that mix-up. That report was done by Agrippine Fugger. If you're just tuning in, we are going gradually, step by step, to the end of our program known as Experts. We are talking about the role of extractive industries in Cameroon. Mr. Sylvanus Mbinla, who is an expert and a member of the civil society, also a committee member of EITI Cameroon, is here with us to tell us more about extractive industries. Mr. Sylvanus, now we're talking of members being suspended. Members decide voluntarily to leave. We have just 1 minute left. If you are asked to protect the environment where these industries are carrying out the activities, what will you do?
To protect the environment is a very complex and complicated issue, but what I can do is to see that the standards are respected by these industries and constant monitoring is being carried to check or follow up to check the abuse, okay, and of course sanctioning, because what has been lacking in our country is follow up and sanctioning.
All right, follow up and sanction. Thanks very much, Mr. Sylvanus, for accepting to come to this program, Experts. We hope next time, if you've been invited, you come to throw more light on certain issues that concerns extractive industries in Cameroon. Televiewers, we have come to the end of this program, but it will be very ungrateful on my side as a presenter of this program to think that the success of this program is thanks to my initiative alone. It is not true. I have some people working that you don't know. You have the cameraman, Atulet, thanks very much. A lady who has the name of a soap, they call her Otans Obono. You have another who is an editor, Terry Ndamba. Well, not going close, as we are going closer to the end, we have Guy Fenat, thanks very much, and Stefan Mbala. Viewers of 7 News Television, don't go away, as next to our program is Club Elite Plus, presented by Amang Tsepono. We love you all. Keep watching 7 News.